Last week was a pretty big week for gaming. On Thursday, Bungie were going to have their marathon server slam. And then over the course of the weekend as well, we were going to see Horizon Hunters Gathering having a closed testing phase of that game. But all I cared about was what was hitting the shelves on Friday, which was Resident Evil 9, aka Resident Evil Requiem, and it blew the competition out of the water. Leon! Hi everyone, it's Az here from HeelvsBabyface. It's been nearly 5 years since we've had a brand new Resident Evil game, Village coming in 2021. And let's just say the Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil 8 have had its fair share of praise plus criticism. And the change, the utter change, moving the series into a first-person perspective and stuff like that, moving away from the characters that we all love, bringing in Ethan Winters and co, who to me didn't hit the mark at all. And here we are with Resident Evil 9 and its return to a familiar face, and in my eyes, the best character in the Resident Evil series, Leon S. Kennedy. Now, if you follow my channel, and if you don't, please hit that subscribe button now. Thank you very much indeed, Lee. I played Resident Evil 9 on Friday and finished it off on Saturday. 2 long streams, 7.5 hours on the Friday and 8.5 hours on the Saturday. I really wanted to explore all the areas, etc., to see what we had with that game. And I gotta say that I was very happy for the most part. Yes, there is elements of Resident Evil 9 to criticize. I have found myself a prisoner of the moment because Resident Evil is one of my favorite franchises of all time. It's in my top 3. I would say my top 3 were Final Fantasy, Resident Evil, and the Witcher series. And so to actually have a brand new Resident Evil game with Leon back, you get very excited indeed. In terms of the game, you play as both Grace and Leon in certain segments, and the first half of the game is very heavy on the Grace gameplay, and then the second half of the game is heavy on the Leon gameplay. And let's just say it becomes a completely different game halfway through when you actually take control over Leon for the most part. Grace herself, who's a new character brought into the Resident Evil universe, has massive problems, if you ask me. She's meant to be a member of the FBI, and yet she acts like a frightened schoolgirl. So it doesn't marry up to what her training would have been and how she should know how to conduct herself in certain situations. Her mother seemed to be much more take charge than she was. And she speaks, and I don't know if this was a decision by the voice actress or by the voice director, but she speaks in that horrible anime way where they drag the beginning of the letter before they speak. Does my head in. And she did it all throughout her time in the game. It made you beg for the Leon segments at time, which was a bit of a detraction from the fact that her elements are actually really good. The lack of firepower, should we say, for the most part, the more horror elements that she brings to the game are actually a lot of fun to deal with. And if her character was just tweaked a little bit, then it would have been absolutely phenomenal. But if you look past that, gameplay is king, and her gameplay elements are very strong. When you switch to Leon, you get a much more Resident Evil 4-esque character. Now, Leon in this is 51 years of age. Same age as me. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's why they made him that way, because Requiem is set in the year 2028. Leon was born in 1977, canonically. And when he comes on board, yes, he's lost a step of pace because of something that's also happened to him, as well as his age, but he is primo. Absolutely great. He has all the weapons that you could possibly want. He's got all the finishing moves that you could possibly desire. And when you're playing Leon, the game to me just really kicks into a whole nother gear. And so at the beginning of the game, you're kind of frustrated by how sparsely they use Leon. But when it switches halfway through into essentially Leon's game, my goodness me, business picks up. The story is what it is. We're not talking about the most complex or the greatest Resident Evil storyline that we've ever been told. And if you actually look at it from another angle, the amount of distress and danger that they put Grace in, considering how important to the story she really is, kind of makes you scratch your head as to why the bad guys would allow this to even happen in the first place. But we're talking about zombies and creatures and stuff like that. And I'll give them a wee bit of a pass, because with all the games in the Resident Evil universe, where are we? 15, 16, 17, 18, I don't know, a lot. So they did a thing. Let's just say that when it comes to the storyline. But as you've seen from the trailers, we go back to Raccoon City, the wasteland, the destroyed version of it that was annihilated in 1998. Thankfully, they retconned the nuclear strike on it. Otherwise, I don't think we'd be popping back there anytime soon. And it's pretty much all Leon from there on in. And, I was smitten, absolutely smitten by it all. There were some wonderful callbacks to the game, some wonderfully placed member berries, not in an egregious key jangling way. It was there to reference what had literally happened. This is, after all, Leon's life. He was a 21-year-old rookie back in 1998, turning up for his first day on the job, and he just so happened to hit a zombie apocalypse as his hello, welcome to Raccoon City present. And so this is legitimately meaningful for Leon. This is something that has haunted him for, in the game's sake, the past 30 years. So yes, there are a couple of moments where absolute fan service is inserted in. I don't have a single solitary problem with that whatsoever. It, to me, was just such an awesome idea to return to the ruins of Raccoon City and to see certain elements from Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3, of course, as well as what has actually become of this place. And those questions are all answered very, very quickly indeed when Leon arrives. And so we build up, of course, to our crescendo. And let's just say by the end of the game, I wasn't in any way, shape or form disappointed. I had a huge grin on my face. I loved it. And we did get a couple of lines of dialogue that was hinting at where the next installment of Resident Evil would go. And yes, another installment. I don't know how many viruses can get loose or be stolen, but let's just say this world has got its fucking problems. So caught in the prisoner of the moment yesterday on Afternoon Tea with Az, I think I gave it a 9.25. Having simmered down a little bit, calmed down, and just assessed everything, I'd give Resident Evil 9 an 8.75 out of 10. The Grace elements were great, but Grace herself, weak. Story, But in terms of everything else, I couldn't ask for anything more. I really couldn't have. It was such a fun, rip-roaring experience. Fingers crossed for some DLC as soon as possible. So, with all of that said about Resident Evil Requiem, how did it actually fare with an audience? Well, here we are on Monday, and a Monday afternoon for a lot of Americans right now, and it's still got 190,000 people nearly playing it live, and it peaked at 344,000 over the weekend. And let's just be honest here, the home of Resident Evil, well, it's PlayStation. So goodness knows how many sales it's done on the PlayStation 5 physically and digitally, but I imagine it's going to be a fair amount. The game seems to be an absolutely monumental success right now. This is also reflected in the Metacritic scores, with the critics themselves giving the game 88, which is where I was, and users giving it a 9.5. People love themselves some Resident Evil Requiem. But a day before, Bungie, they decided to start their Server Slam weekend for their upcoming game Marathon, which releases in just a couple of 3 days or so. So how did that do? And is Marathon going to be Concord 3.0? Just very quickly, I don't think so. I think Marathon is going to find some audience. What type of audience? I'm not too sure. But on the Thursday, when it started, the day before the release of Resident Evil Requiem, it peaked at 143,500 players. Then on the Friday, it jumped down to 123,000 at peak. And then on the Saturday, it was down to 84,000 players at peak. And Sunday, which was the final day, don't concern yourself with the in-players right now because the server slam is now closed. So that might just be internal testers, etc., etc. But on Sunday, it went down to 69,000. Now, there's no denying that a lot of people were probably drawn away from this to go on to Resident Evil 9. And it's interesting that Bungie, I guess with their release date, decided to put the server slam here instead of the previous weekend, which to me would have made more sense because it also gives Bungie a little bit more time to sort out any kinks that the server slam may have brought to the public eye. But they didn't return. They didn't return back at the weekend. And this was a free event. Anybody could download and jump on to this server slam. When the game actually releases, they want $40 for this. And so are people going to be prepared to pay $40 for Marathon? I jumped on to the server slam on Thursday. I didn't have a very good time. I got to be frank with you. I found the game solo-wise to be a pretty horrific experience, and I wouldn't recommend that to anyone. Very slow, very sluggish. I don't think I saw a single player in solo. I was just fighting bots, PvE bots the whole time. When I teamed up with others, it absolutely became a much better experience. But again, kind of rarely met up with any other teams. Did get into some exchanges. We won a couple. We lost a one. But in terms of the pace of it, I just found it sluggish. I just didn't connect with it. And that's what I was really trying to do. There wasn't anything that kind of gripped me and made me go, ooh, this is interesting. Or, oh, I love this dynamic, or I love this biome, or whatever it may be. It felt very generic. And that's what kind of concerned me the most. I wasn't a huge fan of the art style, but you know, there are going to be people who are. But it was just the generic nature of what we were shown. Now, there's going to be more maps, there's going to be more variety, but what I saw and how the gameplay ticked along, and then the inventory management, and then all the different factions that you can do stuff for, I was just kind of like, I feel like I need a degree in maths for this, but I just didn't didn't connect. It didn't do anything for me. I won't be parting with $40 for Marathon, but I will be keeping an eye to see how it actually does when it releases. So that brings us to the closed testing for Horizon Hunters Gathering. Now, this is a tougher one to actually make sense of because we don't know how many people had access to this closed version. Let's just say it was 600. If it was 600, my God, it did great. They managed to get 561 of those to actually log on and test. But let's just be honest, probably open to a pool of a much larger number. What I will say is that there was an interesting pattern, and the interesting pattern, of course, is this gradient, which just goes straight down. Now, on the Friday, they had 561 at peak on their first block of testing. And then on the Saturday block of testing, that had dropped approximately 100, 110 or so. Then when it returned back on the later session on the Saturday, down to 300. And then on the Sunday session, 259. The other Sunday session, pretty much the same. And then on an early morning Monday session, 213. Again, it had a lot of stiff competition with Resi Evil Requiem and also with Marathon. But it's just painting a picture of interest in those invited to participate to come back and have a crack again. So we need certainly more data to actually truly analyze what we've got on the screen here. But an interesting pattern of woo, eek. Now, it's a while until Horizon Hunters Gathering releases, so they've got plenty of time to do whatever they need to do. Marathon, however, releases on the 5th of March, which is only 3 days away. And while Resident Evil is a single-player game, and no doubt when people have completed the story, it will probably start to drop off. Yes, there will be people going back and replaying to do achievements or different difficulty levels, etc. Has Marathon got a really good stab here on Thursday to get a good number of players on their first day? For $40, it's going to be interesting to see. And those people who are going to end up paying for the game, how many of them are actually going to stick around, particularly due to the strength of Arc Raiders, for example, which in itself is holding on to players pretty darn well. And if this becomes a battle of the extraction shooters, I would put my money on Arc Raiders winning. I just think there is a much more attractive loop. I just find that everything menu-wise, character-wise, is positioned much easier for players to come on and manage. I think Marathon will get an audience. I don't think it's going to be the size of audience that Bungie are going to hope for, though. But what I do know is that Resident Evil Requiem blew them all away this weekend. God bless Leon S. Kennedy. I'll see you in the next video. You take care. Goodbye, Baloo Boo.